What is the most powerful trait we have? You need power, speed. Let your imagination do the rest.
Undisputed, the Mexican Monster Pack out now.
Boxing King Media, we're here in the Hard Rock Cafe, another place ticked off interviewing Frank Smith on his global adventures.
How are you, mate?
Have you just landed and come straight here?
Yeah, just landed.
Mr. Presser,
I missed it. I watched it, but that's why I look like this.
you look the same.
That's the good thing about having hair like this. You can turn up anywhere. It doesn't look like you just woken up.
A very, very valid point. How long did it take you to get through New York Customs? Because that is a long wait.
I was off the plane, in the car, within 25 minutes.
Private jet, or how did you do that?
Not private jet. No, I had to sell it. No, global entry. Very quick. You should sign up for it. Easy.
Yeah, I need to look into that because I did think I did 2 hours and it was like being in a sweatbox. But, you know, before we talk about this event, we're obviously in New York for Ring 3. We've got to finish off the weekend's boxing because everyone Eddie did an escape. Eddie did his 2 favourite channels. I didn't speak to anybody else and ran off. So
yeah, I escaped as well. In all fairness, I had to get back to London, to Brighton, so I escaped very quickly too, so I apologise.
I know you would have given me time, but you went. So I'm going to start with a quote from HARLEM EUBANK, what he said, because obviously in his head it was a controversial ending, and I think he described it as the go along, get along gang, referring to the people that work within Matchroom, the commentators, etc. He was upset about Carl Frampton. I know Carl's had a relationship with Jack before, been in the same gym, etc. But he raised some concerns about that. So the first thing I want to ask you is, are you worried about what he said? Do you think that's just tempers at the time, or has he got anything behind that?
I mean, look, the one thing I would say, I think it's very hard for the commentators and the production team to know what's happened if there's no clear picture as to what's gone down. You know, even us sitting there in the front row, we were watching going, Jack's doctor didn't call it off. And then it looked like, well, does that mean that Harlem's doctor called it off? But then Harlem's doctor afterwards said it wasn't her that called it off. This is the times where you need more clarity from the board, as in, with the decision, this is exactly what happened. Just like any other sport, like an explanation of what exactly happened that night. Because it's very difficult sitting there, because you're all sort of guessing, aren't you? And I haven't watched back what he said the commentators were saying about the ending, but it was very unclear, is the reality. And everyone on that front row had different opinions as to what had happened there. And I think that's one takeaway that we should take from it. I think the board should come out and there should be an interview process or a process where it's very clear as to what's happened there. You know, like Carl Frampton, it was the first show he's worked, a Matchroom show. So it's not like he's aligned to Matchroom. Obviously, he's come across from the Queensbury and TNT with the new DAZN deal. So, like, that's not really there. You know, do you know what I mean? I'm sure if Carl Frampton came out and spoke about, you know, response to him, that would be an interesting conversation between the two of those. But I don't know exactly what was said by him to raise that response from Harlem. But, you know, when it comes to actually being there on the night, it was very unclear as to exactly what happened. I think that's for everyone, you know.
I think Harlem was saying that Carl was in the changing rooms giving Jack advice on what to do, and then he's doing the commentary. And I think there was like,
I don't know if he was on commentary. Yeah, I maybe what I can't remember, but
he was a pundit.
He was a pundit, I think. Yeah, I'm not sure if he was on the commentary, but look, people have relationships obviously with different people in the sport. You know, we know that it's a very small business. People have trained with people have got on with people have fallen out with people. We have pundits on our shows that have fallen out with fighters that are fighting on the shows, and because it's such a small industry, that kind of happens.
Fair play. Did you agree with the scorecards and the ending of that? Of the headbutt was clear to see, but the scorecards, because I think Harlem felt it was a draw.
I thought, look, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I don't think it was the best fight I've ever watched for the 6 rounds that we saw. I think probably in the latter part of the rounds, like 5 and 6, Jack was a bit clearer. Those earlier rounds were quite close, you know? So I can't remember what the scorecards were exactly. Wasn't the ending anyone wanted, let's be honest. And it kind of shows why, you know, people say about game plans in boxing weight, you need to go for it because you never know what's going to happen in this sport. You can sit and wait for 12 rounds, and we've seen how many fights have we seen? Conor Walker being an example, who went that long in a fight and then came out with a huge win. But you have to take your chances in this sport. And I think the first 4 or so rounds were very messy, not too much engagement from either side, really. So, yeah, I don't really. I think Jack, with the last 2 rounds, rounds 5 and 6, probably took those rounds, and that was probably what swayed it. I'm not saying the scorecards were bang on, but I would have said to Jack, but you just have to go for it. That's the reality, because you never know what's going to happen.
Definitely, I'm just going to change something. No, I've just changed it to 1080p because 4K will wipe my memory card out. So yeah, some valid points there. And I think one of the things, you said there wasn't the greatest fight to watch. And people are always asking me about opinions. Who do you think is going to win? And I think I told everyone, I don't think it's going to be a great fight to watch. I'm not an expert matchmaker, but if you look at both guys, counter punchers, the styles on paper would never gel. And I think Tony Bellew said something. He tweeted something talking about that promoters should look at the actual matchmaking of the styles rather than just the names, etc. Do you think that's something may have missed in that fight?
Yeah, look, it's a fine balance with it all, isn't it? It's the commercial element of names that are going to sell and bring something to it. Not every fight is going to gel. That's the reality. You can look how many fights there are, in, night out. Not every fight is going to gel and come together. I think sometimes you have to look at it from a fan's perspective. You do have to look at it from a fan's perspective, and that's why it's better to be honest. Did I sit there and go, this is the best fight I've ever watched? No. But that is the sport we're in. Just like any sport. Some football matches don't gel and aren't a good game. But yeah, it's always our job to deliver entertainment. I think we're in a world now where people want literally to be entertained from second one through to the finish of it. And, they don't want to sit around and wait and let things warm up in anything they watch. Not just in boxing, but in any sport. So yeah. We have to be honest, we have to be open. And if a fight's not great, you have to say, fight's not great. But that's the way it is. And both of them will come back. Both of them have been in exciting fights. And it just didn't gel on the night, is what it is. And we move on.
Fair play, and these things happen. But either way, Jack Catterall moves on. And then we'll jump across to New York. Shakur Stevenson. What's the situation with him? Because obviously he said what he said, and we still no one really knows what went on behind the scenes with Lou DiBella and this deal that he said he left Matchroom and is with DiBella. What's he got left with Matchroom? How many fights, and what's the relationship like?
The relationship's good. We worked with him obviously on that Saudi fight. He had the delays with the injury as well. The relationship continues. I don't know I'm not sure Shakur's ever said anything in detail about it himself. It was just a lot of rumours, like there always are in boxing. We had that relationship that carried on. We've got this fight working together, and then we go from there. It'd be great to continue to work with him. I think we have worked well with him and his team to help grow and build him and build out his personality. And I think that's what we do well with fighters. And I think Terence Crawford, another example, when in the shows we work with him on, I think we've been a good part in bringing out his personality, and Eddie especially as well. So hopefully we can continue to work with Shakur. He's an amazing talent. He's got a tough fight. This mandatory that's been in place, it should have happened, I think, 9 months ago or something like that. But we're here now. A brilliant fight. Zepeda's no joke. It's a proper fight. But I believe Shakur Stevenson is one of the best fighters out there current day. And I think you're going to see a great performance from him and go on to bigger and bigger fights.
And, I think you kind of spoke about the fight well there. The bit I want to speak to you about is we've seen Matchroom do a lot of good work with a lot of good American fighters, obviously Richardson, Hitchens, Stevenson, Belanga, who's also on this card. And because I was speaking to Don Mingle about this, because I think the fight deals have always been 3 fights or 4 fights. Is there a thing in the US where you can only sign them for 4 fights? Because it seems like you guys do all the groundwork, get their names out there, and just before you maybe get your investment back, they decide to go work solo with, whoever's putting the money up.
I think it's our job is to invest in fighters, build them. We have different contracts with different types of fighters, depending on the stage they're at of their career. We've had great relationships with many fighters for a long time that we've worked with, and sometimes it's a short-term thing, sometimes it's longer term. It all depends. Ultimately, it's our job to go and deliver, and if we can deliver for them, happy days. That's the focus. Look at Jesse Bam Rodriguez as an example, someone we've been with for 3-4 years now, and look at where he is now. Obviously, headlines on July 19th, and then he's got the Puma fight November 22nd in Saudi as well. So he's a perfect example. Diego Pacheco, another young fighter that we worked all the way through with, he fights on July 19th as well, and then we'll look to headline at the end of the year. So every fight is different. Every fight is different, but when it's working, we want to continue that relationship. Sometimes it's about us also taking calculated risks and decisions and making a choice based on how we feel. We're the ones at the same time investing money alongside the zone, and we want to make sure we're comfortable with the risk we're taking.
Fair play. And then the last thing for you, how do you as a promoter, this probably goes out to all promoters, protect yourselves, because this may end up being a common theme now. A lot of fighters, you build up from the ground up and they get to a point where, you know, if they want to be on Riyadh season cards, they just think, well, they can just negotiate direct, cut your percentage out. How do you protect yourselves in that situation now?
I think Turki Al-Sheikh has shown that, you know, he's loyal and will work with partners who deliver and work with them to deliver the best possible events, you know. And if that means fighters that you represent, we represent, like Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who fights on that card, and the relationship's good, then, you know, I think we're in a good place with that. I think he's shown time and time again with not just us, but other promoters as well, how willing he is to work with promoters. And, you know, it's good for the sport of boxing, and long may it continue. So I'm not concerned. I think we're in a great place. I think the sport's in a great place. Best it's been in a long time. You know, look, there's going to be fighters that deals end with. There's going to be fighters that things don't end in a great place, but so be it. That's always been the way in the sport. It's never going to change, and you just have to work through it the best way possible.
Who wins Shiraz Belanga?
Who do you think? I actually think it's a 50-50 fight. I think it's a brilliant fight, and I think Shiraz, coming off the back of that Adames fight, will, you know, want to prove himself. Coming up in weight will help him. I think Edgar Belanga's got a bit to prove as well. And he knows if he wins this fight, it sets him up for the biggest fights in the division. But they both got a lot of pressure on them. But I do truly believe it's a 50-50 fight. And I'm very excited for it.
Just a question on Belanga there. You know, you said there earlier that you got the loyalty with His Excellency. How come Belanga was able to do something direct?
We had a different relationship. Our deal had ended with him. We had a different relationship. And here's what like I say, every fight is different. You know, some fighters, when you work with them from day one, I think the relationship is very different to when you sign someone on 2 or 3 fight deals, and it's more transactional at that point. You know, there's always going to be the transactional deals, which are more like, right, 1 or 2 fights which serve a purpose for both sides, and it's like, thanks very much. Now I'm going, you know, look at Canelo. We promoted 9 fights with Canelo, 8 or 9 fights. That was a tremendous period for our business, you know, and it was great. It was great, not financially. Financially is not always the focus. It's about what can build your business. And Canelo was a great example of someone where it worked for both of us at a great time. And then the relationship ended. No hard feelings. Everyone gets along. And everyone, you know, he moves on, we move on. So I think every deal is very different. And it's hard to sort of pigeonhole and say, sorry, it's hard to pigeonhole and just say everything should be the same. I think they're chucking us out here. But yeah, Edgar's deal was up. We did that fight. We had the comeback fight after that, and then he went and did his own thing.
2 quick ones. I forgot to ask you. EUBANK Senior Junior never turned up on Saturday. Surprised by that?
No, I mean, I know he's. I read something online. He was doing something with Lennox Lewis. I'm not sure if it was that day or another day in Jamaica. But no, look, he's always been close with Harlem. He's been at a number of his fights. You know, I'm not really surprised. I wasn't sure if he was ever going to come, to be honest. So.
Frank Smith, thank you very much.
The most powerful trait we have. You need power, speed. Let your imagination do the rest.
Undisputed, the Mexican Monster Pack out now.